What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and this is another episode of the Facts Project. Today, special guest, repeat guest, my brother, Brian Lambert, Wingless Comics. We are here to talk about the division between heaven and hell in the third installment of his great indie comic, Justice. Thank you for being here, brother.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, man. And I actually mean that from the bottom of my heart, man. We got to say that like a lot of times. When you go on a show, you'll be like, oh, man, it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm just so happy. Nah, but like I really, I enjoy our conversations because you're a real comic book head and you've actually read the issues, on and on and on, man. It's fun.
Yeah, for real. I mean, if we're talking about it now, I think you, as long as I've started this podcast, you have been the person that has been on it the most.
I'm gonna take that honor with I'm getting one of them like a YouTube plaque.
Yeah, for real. I would just send you something in the mail, something I can get from the trophy case.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like I said, I have a good time, man, and it's always a good conversation, good vibes. So I like that.
Definitely. So, I mean, to get right into it, I mean, the last time that we spoke, you were pretty much rounding up the first. I would call it the first volume of Nightfall.
Mhm.
And with the slew of characters that you basically put out in that comic, Justice being included in that fold, you have essentially a large amount of characters that you have to put out on a pedestal, and every single one of them seems to have a story where they're taking it up a notch. I will say that. So like that's always been good. Like in Nightfall, of course, I got we've talked about Avery the Astonishing, which is, of course, is a constant hustles imprint, but yet you've introduced Lux in this. Justice, of course, was in it. Caliburn was in it, and now essentially since I've met you within these 2 years and everything like that, now we're kind of at the point where a lot of these characters are starting to get their shine. Justice, of course, being the flagship of the company, but everybody else is starting to get some shine now.
So the plan was always to make sure that I introduce characters in a way that seemed cinematic and also not labored. A lot of times when you introduce a new comic, you have a character go like, oh, crazy, I need help. Here comes Hal Jordan Green Lantern or whatever, because they're going to launch that book. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to introduce the characters in a way that felt real. In terms of, I love Hong Kong cinema, and a lot of those movies, especially the action stuff, you start every movie in the middle. The story's in the middle, and then they'll give you flashbacks, little things here and there, and then they rush you towards the ending. So I've always liked that. I always like introducing characters in a way where the main character or the characters in the story already know them, already have history, or already can interact with them.
It's true.
Origin, man, I feel like origins are labored sometimes, right? Like if you have to go and, this person got their powers from a science, it's labored. We've seen that done so many times that I feel like it's unnecessary. Right. And so I wanted to do that in a way that, like you said, it gives every character shine. I love Justice. That's obviously the flagship character, like we talked about, but having Lux as a character is dope because that's representation for girls and for young girls and coming of age, right? And then it's a plus for me that I get my sister, who's an amazing author, to write it for me, right? So as much as I'm introducing this character to this created world, I'm introducing my sister to my world of creation, right? And then that's like a familial bond. So while that might not have like monetary significance to the audience, it has emotional significance to me and to the story.
Right.
So that creates that, right? Like that's a synergy kind of thing. Same for Caliburn. Caliburn, I always planned on having Caliburn kind of in the background or interacting with Justice. Those, Justice and Caliburn are my Batman and Superman. I always wanted that kind of duality there. And I wanted like the human guy to be the grim and, like the like laughing, joking, oh, we're going to live through it, whatever. And then the immortal guy, the darker one, because he's seen so much. Then we came out with images of Caliburn and people went crazy. And I'm not talking, look, I don't have hundreds of thousands of millions of people, but I mean, our fan base was like, yo, give me more Caliburn. And I was like, but let me finish. Nah, I don't care if you finish Justice. Give me more Caliburn.
I think it's more so of the fact because you created him to have this like really cool personality.
I feel like, honestly,
he's cool.
I always say that they're my Batman and Superman, but the reality of it is they're like my Goku and Vegeta, right? Like Goku's the guy, he's the main character. Everybody loves Vegeta because that dude, he's that dude. And I feel like Caliburn's the same way. Like, oh yeah, Justice might be stronger, but Caliburn is that dude. And so I really, really enjoy being able to tell his story. And the way that I do it in the books is I just do like maybe 6 pages per Justice book, so that I can continue to do that without having to divide people's attention into 3 and 4 and 5 books. Right. And I can just kind of build the story up over time. So even this next 6 pages gets bananas for Caliburn in Justice number 3. It's going to be great, man. Like I like being able to do that. Another thing as creatives and as indies, we're, all of us are like, oh man, I got a universe. I got, hundreds of characters, and we all do, but no one cares. Right. Like our fans care, but at the same time, if you put a poster up of 100 of your characters, nobody's going to be able to pick them out. They don't know. So I feel like it was important to build on each character and like to introduce her, and then to introduce the Saber Initiative, and then to introduce Immortalis. You know what I mean? So people can, oh, I've seen that before somewhere. Oh, they've been talking about it. So it just has a little bit more meat to it than me just throwing out a bunch of characters at people and being like, hey, love them all.
Right. And I could say, well, I wanted to ask, I was like, you're not really with the creation of Lux and actually getting your actual sister involved to write the book. Like, you're not creating no act of nepotism. If she couldn't write, you would tell her, nah, you ain't writing.
Oh, yeah, no. So it's actually a pretty, okay. So Lux herself is a unique character in a number of ways. So my sister will bring this up at the most inopportune time. So I'm going to do it now. Years and years ago, over 20 years ago, my sister had written something, and she was like, still either she had just graduated high school, or was just about to, and she had written something. And I was in my asshole days. I apologize immensely for it, but she showed it to me, and I was basically like, "This is the worst thing ever. You'll never be a writer. You suck. Put a pen down, right?" Like, and so in my mind, I didn't say it like that. In my mind, I was like, "No, man, you need this. This doesn't. You know what I mean? I did it the right way." I realized that I 100% didn't. It was so mean and so fucked up. But she actually was then and did become an even better writer. And so when I approached her about writing Lux, it was hilarious because I had to go and be like, hey, remember when I had said you would never be a writer? I was wrong because you're great. So could you help? You know what I mean?
Right.
And her background, her degree is in theater. Well, one of her degrees is in theater. So obviously she understands like cinematics and views and creating all these things. And so it ended up being great. And it was opportune in that originally, the original script for Nightfall didn't have Lux in it at all.
Oh. It
had another character. And me and this creator had a falling out, which kind of feels like it's my thing now. I had a falling out with a creator. We had a real difference of opinion, which actually had nothing to do with the creative side of things.
Gotcha.
But when we severed that, the character, some of the threads of the character were very important to me. It was very important to have an innocent face and an innocent voice and an innocent perspective in Nightfall for me.
And she's the youngest character in Nightfall.
Exactly. So that was super important. And I wanted to fill that gap, but I really didn't know how. And so, like I said, I approached my sister about a character that I wanted to do. And I was like, hey, if this comes out the way I want it to, would you write it after Nightfall? Right. And I was like, you get oversight even in Nightfall. You tell me if I'm going wrong, or if this is not how a teenage girl would react to certain things, or, whatever. And if it works, people like it, would you like to write it? And she was 100% down. People have really taken to the character. And so it just all worked out, right? It was like a series of mistakes that led to this really, really great thing. And it led to a really great script for my sister, and a really great character. So I'm stoked. I'm more stoked to see some of the newer stuff than I am Justice. And I'm stoked for Justice. Don't get it twisted.
I was about to say, I was like, hold on now.
Yeah. So I like people being able to create around worlds. Star Wars used to do it a lot, right? Like Star Wars would have this main plot, but if you played any of the games, it was like these side characters that would like interact and weave in and out of the main story. Like TIE Fighter is one of my favorite games, right? Because the narrative on there is so dope, but you weave in and out of the main, trilogy story. Yeah. And so I feel like the same thing is happening with Wingless, right? The main story is what's going on with Justice. but now I get to see Lux, and I get to see her come in and out of his life. I get to
Right.
see the stuff for Immortalis. I get to see the Saber Initiative, and all these like ripples that make new stories. And for me, that's so dope. I know what I want to do. I know which way I'm going. So
Yeah.
seeing the ways other people are going with what I've created is so interesting to me.
Yeah, generally, if there's a certain aspect or a main, I guess, a main plot and synopsis for an entire universe, it doesn't matter who the characters are. You can literally subtract and transplant somebody else in within that same
Yeah.
universe, and it almost has the same feel of that original book that maybe you read. You may have loved those characters time and
Yeah.
time again, but it's kind of like when you was just talking about with Star Wars, Rogue One.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
deal. Everybody
Yeah.
loves Rogue One.
Exactly. It's so well done, and it didn't need to lean on the legacy characters. It could, right, but it
Yeah.
didn't need to, and it felt fresh and it felt awesome, and
Yep.
and you got a little more hands on into the world, and that's what I feel like other series by other people tend to do.
It's true. It's true. But let's get into Justice issue 3. So with it, when we look at where we left off, you know, we're kind of like at a standpoint where I guess Justice is a little bit confused and lost, but yet he knows exactly where he needs to go. Like after that cliffhanger in issue 2, and pretty much like from the opening sequence in issue 3, we start to get the reemergence of Dante, who pretty much is like acting like a Karen to begin with.
I love and hate Dante. I was very influenced
It's a
by
good character.
yeah, so I like him. He was influenced by what you call it too, like the Dante's Infernal game.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where it's like he's pretty duplicitous. There's some things that you don't really know
Mhm.
altogether. But I also feel like I base everything, not everything, but I like basing a lot of it on mythology, right? So
Yeah.
if you're gonna go to hell, who better than to guide you, right? Like
Mhm.
that, to me, it just makes sense. So I love that interaction. I also take care to not well to remind the reader that like Justice is somebody who's long lived. Like this is yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't come to Earth much, right? Or even if he's on Earth, he's interacting differently, right? But
Yeah.
prior to this, you know, he he didn't have a human skin, right? Like this dude is an ethereal being, right? So prior to this, and he's kind of hinted at it, is he's never been on Earth this way. He's never
Yeah.
just kind of stopped in interacting with humans this kind of way. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have these connections to other beings that have been around, to heaven, obviously, to hell, to all these things
Mhm.
that drive the cosmos as we know it. So it's real fun to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly like that take on it. I mean, the fact that you've been able to mix in a lot of newer characters. We and no, in almost I think in almost every single issue, of course issue 1, but
Yeah.
in this third one, you've actually added a lot more newer characters. You did that in issue 2 as well. So like there's a good amount of side characters that you've never met before and all of a sudden make their introduction. Literally a couple pages in, you get met with La Muerte. So
Mhm.
like she now you just basically told me who exactly she is and who she is in connotation to. She has her own mythological background, but yet she is taking the place of somebody who, if you remember from Roman mythology, the Riverman.
Yeah.
So basically crossing the river of Styx, going into Hades, putting the 2 coins on your eyes so you have safe passage.
Yeah. So even and this is not spoilers, right? So even Justice mentions that as in the first 2 pages when he's going into hell, he says like, why wouldn't he exact his gold price? Because he doesn't meet Chiron or
Mhm.
Charon, depending on how you say it, whatever.
Which is La
Um,
Muerte's brother.
yes, right. So he's missing. So someone like that being missing, if you guys know anything about me, is going to be super important later on.
Right.
A couple issues down the line. La Muerte gets introduced and she is a soul reaver. Like that is her title.
Mm.
So she brokers souls. And again, we're going to see a little bit more of that in issue 4 as well. What I like doing is building on characters and the stories. As she and Justice interact, it becomes plain like they know each other
Oh
for
yeah.
a long time.
Oh yeah.
And
And if I may ask, why does Justice just get ass every
I mean,
episode? Like,
I
what is
feel
this?
okay. So this is I'm gonna say this, right? Like, I feel like if you like the left hand of God and you're an angel, you do all these things and you're dope. I feel like you should. That's part of the game. Like you got swag. Women love you. Like, do your thing. No, but the female connections for Justice are also going to be very, very important moving forward,
Yeah.
because they're all very, very different. If we're paying attention, right?
Hmm.
His interaction with Volante, he thinks it's one thing. In issue 2, he's like, "Man, I've been your protector. Like I'm the dude that's been looking out for you." And she's basically like, "What are you talking about, bro? Like, you serve me. I'm more
Hmm.
powerful than you." Like, and he's like, "Wait, what?" Because again, he doesn't really know exactly what's going on. And that's going, again, another plot point that's going to be explored as we move forward with the story. If we're talking about Billy adds a humanity to him,
Right.
right? Even in the short bursts, there are things that he's going to disconnect with that she is not, because she's
Mm.
human. So that's a very, very important aspect of that as well. And that dynamic is going to have an impact moving forward. When we meet La Muerte, again, her and Justice have a connection from years past. And that one, honestly, is probably going to be one of the most world shattering connections moving forward, because it's going to reveal some things about Justice that people may not expect, or may not understand. She's also, again, we're talking about long-lived people, and they know each other fairly well. So
Right.
it's not a stretch to note that she probably has connections to Baylor as well, who is
Uh,
someone that's in Nightfall. Again, these are people who have a history together, a long history together.
gotcha.
So again, all these threads kind of overlap, and obviously it's going to take time to like, you know, to weave it into the complete story, but it's all important, right? And I write Justice from a place, obviously, that I come from, and
Mhm.
female relationships are very important to me. Friends, my mother, family, aunts, like all these things. And I definitely want to quantify those relationships within the mythology that I've created. With a lot of, all these women are powerful, all these women are intelligent, all these women have a purpose, and that purpose goes beyond helping Justice or being, just an accessory. So, as again, La Muerte is one of my favorite characters. And
Gotcha.
as she continues to evolve and make appearances, I feel like she's going to be one of everybody's favorite characters.
Mm. Now, if I may ask, from the perspective of which you've written these three issues, and we've touched on it in past podcasts about how you've been able to bob and weave throughout mythology, but from the aspect that you've actually taken pieces of a bunch of distinctive mythologies, whether it's been Mesoamerican, whether it's been Roman, whether it's been Greek, whether it's been African, like how are you researching all of this and then placing them into the setting of a lot of these stories as they're coming out?
I take, well, I should say this. I one take Christianity and the base that I'm coming from
Hmm.
as a mythology, not
Okay.
as a religion or a belief system for me, right?
Right.
Because then that would be a disservice to what that is. So if I can look at Christianity as a mythological system, the more you know about mythology, the more you realize like a bunch of them are the same.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like a bunch of them, they tell the exact same stories with different characters. I love Japanese mythology. I haven't really been able to throw some of that in there, but it promise you it's coming.
Okay.
But what I do is I look for the character and the purpose, right? The purpose of La Muerte is to do such A to B to Justice, right? Or
Right.
to make this story happen. Okay, I know I want it to be a mythological character, and I look up mythological characters with similarities. But I'm also very, very careful of the cultural aspects of it, of all of it, because I'm not one to just use a culture in order to uplift what I'm doing.
Right.
It's important to respect what the character is, or to distance yourself from the origin of said entity. Because again, while we look at Greek mythology as mythology, somebody believed that at one point,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like that was
Of
their
course.
religion. So I definitely try to be careful with that aspect of it. And there's just a wealth of ideas. And I think that sometimes we get locked into like diversity just being like, oh, we put people of character, or we put women, or we put whatever, right? But
Right.
diversity to me is like cultural too. Like there are so many rich things in so many cultures, and there are so many similarities that it would be a disservice not to marry them. I also said, and something that we did, Malachi and I did very early. Malachi, her, has her own, pantheon of gods, right? Like it's more Yoruba,
Yeah.
if you've read the books, and so that gets touched on there. So when we were putting things together, Malachi and I had a long conversation because I had to tell him, like, it doesn't matter to me, right? Like we call them Greek gods, Christians call them angels, this person called them, whatever they call them. But for me, they all have the same ranking. They all have the same status.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're creating a story, if I don't look at a better than, less than, then I'm perfectly fine, right? Because again, I'm just getting the cultural richness as opposed to saying like, okay, all the Christian characters are going to be top tier and everybody else is lower. No, man, everybody's equal, and that's one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons why, even obviously, we're talking about angels, and this is how he presents himself, how the spirit, the entity justice presents himself on our mortal plane. When we talk about God, I don't use it as like, again, just the Christian God. God is an entity that is a power beyond, our labeling.
Right.
And that's the way I treat all of these mythologies. And that's why I feel like it's easy for me to marry them to each other.
Yeah. I mean, another aspect of the fact that, okay, issue 3 is, of course, has a lot more action than than issues 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the fact that you've been able to touch on mythology through just the characters alone, you've now started to introduce the creatures.
Yes.
And there's multiple in this issue.
Yes.
So a lot of people touch on mythology, and then they just touch on the character themselves. You've actually taken the opportunity to be like, okay, I'm about to throw like everything in there. I'm throwing some dragons in there. Might be some griffins in here. Might be some hobgoblins. We just let's just put it all out there.
Yeah. So my idea has always been like that justice in the world of the Wingverse itself is like a darker version of our world. And this gets touched on in the issue 3. There's like a whole soliloquy where it says basically that like modern comics, okay, I treat kind of modern comics like their reality. And so the modern heroes that we have right now went from the 90s, from the 80s where it was like bright and the silver golden age and nice. And then oh man, evil or darkness is getting stronger. So they tried to fight it with darkness, which is your gritty 90s, comics. And then they fail, they lose.
Right.
So this is kind of the rebirth of that heroic age to me. So since we have the rebirth of that heroic age, the Wingverse is a dark version of our world. All the things that we've been trying to hold back all this time run freely. People know about them. Billy getting attacked by vampires in the first issue isn't like uncommon. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not maybe front page news, but it's one of those things that everybody knows it happens, and like sucks to be us. And so again, if these mythological creatures are here, if an angel walking around isn't, the most amazing thing that anybody's ever seen, then we have to have those other creatures, right?
Oh yeah.
We have to have the things that go bump in the night. We have to expand that if we want to expand the world, because otherwise you're just slapping a label on a character that you made that does something cool. Oh, we got vampires, so here's Dracula, and bye. We don't have no backstory. You don't have any, he doesn't have any depth. He doesn't have,
it's true,
all these extras. And so I really try to make sure that we do that. And not just for me though, but again, I got Caliburn, right? So what is Caliburn going to be fighting? What is he going to be interacting with? What are the far reaching aspects of any of these characters, of what happens in Nightfall, of what happens in Justice? I like to set stories that send ripples through other stories. Look, you got, sorry, sucks to be you, Saber Initiative, but you got to deal with what happened in Nightfall. Like you got to deal with the aftermath. Sucks to be you.
Yeah, right? Well, that's the whole point of the book, is basically you're dealing with the aftermath of what happened in Nightfall.
Exactly. As opposed to just leaving it as a hanging kind of thing. You've got to deal with that. And I feel like the creatures and the characters themselves help build on that. They help create that in an organic way, as opposed to, again, just doing a villain of the week kind of thing even though every plot is a villain of the week kind of thing, like I want to take over the world, I want to destroy the world, I want somebody to love me. Like there are very few motivations for people, period. But I think you can do them in engaging and interesting ways in order to improve your character and to show more about your characterizations.
Question, and I'm hoping I'm not spoiling too much. Does Billy have an ulterior motive?
You're not spoiling anything. Does she have an ulterior motive? No.
Okay.
Is she more than she seems? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, and even in the vile, evil, whatever way.
Like I wanted to, like, how much power does she generally have?
Not gonna tell you.
Okay.
So there are obviously, like I said, there are some threads that are gonna come up later. I can't wait to get you specifically issue 4, because you're gonna kind of see some of those threads move forward. Billy is definitely a very, very interesting character to me, and I can say that about all of them. But Billy is someone who would stand toe to toe with like an angel, right? Like she's going to stare him in the face, and you're going to see why even their initial interaction in issue 1, like why she was there, as things progress and how that affects her psyche. So again, without spoilers, because this is not necessarily a plot point. Billy is out that first issue because she's getting over a tragedy.
Right.
And so it's going to, again, issue 5, 6, 7, we're going to see a little bit more of that and why. And it's going to have the significance of like, oh, this is why she was here. This is why this happens. This is why she is what she is.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Got it. All right. You've obviously added a little bit of comic relief in this issue 3, because we come to find out Justice's real name.
Yeah.
Can you pronounce that for me? Because I was reading it in the book a couple times.
So it's Othniel.
Othniel.
Yeah. So it literally translates to Lion of God.
Okay. Because obviously he don't like Dante saying it.
Yeah.
He did not mind other people calling him that, but it was like a nickname. They called him Nell.
Yeah. So as we get into it a little bit further, right? Well, so you've read issue 3, so we know that Dante is not the most awesome guy.
No.
But you ever have that person when we were growing up, right? You had that dude that kind of wants to hang with the crew and they want to call you by your nickname, and you're like, nah, fam, my name is Brian. You don't get hey, what's up, B? Nah, my name is Brian. Government, leave me alone. So that's part of it. Also, names are very important. Mythologically speaking, worldly speaking, whatever, names and words themselves have power. So Justice is very careful of who has power over calling him, right? Because again, you got to remember, he's an angel. So, and he's a guardian warrior angel. So who can call his name? Right. Not very many people, right? So that's important. Him being called Naya, there are only certain people. We've seen Baylor call him Naya. We've seen La Muerte now call him Naya. And if you read issue 1/2, he tells the girl in there, the little girl, hey, you can call me Naya. So it's very, very few and far between. It was subtle. Yeah. Even Billy, at this point, I don't think calls him Naya. I think he's like, yeah, call me Justice. Like, my name is Justice, right? So it's a very important little nuanced aspect of kind of who you let in, how you let these people in. And even that is going to come back in his relationship and interactions with Billy, because it's important. Right. So I love it. And I love not like punking the guy who does that, but I feel like I've grown up. I've been in that situation where somebody's a little bit too familiar and you're like, hey man, back up. Back up. Yeah.
Like my mom is the only person that calls me Jamie, but that's what I'm saying. So when people like call me that, I'll be like, no, you don't get that honor.
That's what I'm saying, right? Yeah. It's super. Yeah, same way, man. So, I like setting that division, right, and being declarative about that, because again, I feel like that's like a human aspect that a lot of times you won't get in comics. They're just going to go about their thing, and they're going to call them by whatever their superhero name is. Hey, Spectrum, and it's like, but he thinks he knows this guy.
Yeah.
Why would he call him Spectrum? You know what I mean? Like, hey,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, nah. So yeah, I like adding those little pieces. And they're gonna, again, I like setting breadcrumbs because they're gonna be important later on.
Is
Uh,
is it easy to, I guess, because not necessarily to say that there's a bunch of time jumps in this or anything like that, but there's sequences in the book where you're of course in a setting where justice is from, whether it be heaven or hell, and then you have scenes with him on earth. Is it easy to provide contrast where he's jumping from there to here?
the easiest way, and what I do usually, is if it's in sepia tones, it's a
Hmm.
flashback. If
Got you.
it's now, it's not, right?
Right.
And so that's the easy kind of declarative way for me to do it, as opposed to doing like a long time ago in a banner up at the top, because that
Right.
feels like it slows everything down. Again, being a big fan of Hong Kong cinema, they do it like that, right? Like you'll just get a flash of like some, memory that they had or some interaction they had in the past, without them going into too much detail about it. But the
Mm.
context lets you know what it is.
True.
So without doing that too much and using it as a crutch, I do like to have those things. I do like in the issue 2, I like showing Justice where he's like, you see him standing one way with Billy, and that's when he's like, I'm protecting you, like I
Yeah.
protected you. And then you see the
He
next
he
panel, that's
do
a
set
double
him up
page
to stand
spread.
different. I just now realized that
Yeah.
shit.
So
Like
if
he's
you, yeah,
standing there all with his chest puffed out.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the actual background scene, she's actually in front of him, protecting him with the bubble.
Right.
Yeah. So again, it's those little things that like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Like that to me is the fun part of laying those breadcrumbs. So then when I can come back and say like, again, their next conversation is going to be different. Hey,
Mm.
this is such and such happened. Like, now do you understand that like you're kind of wrong, Justice, or you may be barking up the wrong tree slightly?
Right.
And either he'll figure it out or he won't. But that's the dilemma of him being a hero.
Mm. I mean, as far as the cliffhangers that you've been able to give us between issue 1, issue 2, now with issue 3, because there's so much as far as action sequences,
Mhm.
like this final, I guess, mano a mano that has to happen is
Mhm.
pretty much waiting in the wings. Is
Mhm.
it farther down the line, or is this something that we're pretty much going to expect next issue?
So issue 4 is going to end this particular arc.
Okay.
It will not end the story at all. The story of
Right.
Justice will continue, right? But like, yeah, I'm doing 4 issue arcs. I had a really good friend, just Jason Reeves, 133 art. Like
Yeah.
that's my
Yep.
dude. Like I love Jason, man. That's my guy, and he's put me on a lot of game. So when I first started, like 2 years ago, and I had my little 0 issue, I had planned, oh, it's gonna be a 6 issue arc, be 7, 8, and blah blah blah. He was like, why would you do that? Why would you make people wait 6 years to finish one story from you?
Hmm.
Potentially as an indie. And I always kept that in mind after that because it made so much sense. So doing a 4-part story arc, I think is reasonable. I think you're going to get enough story. You're going to be able to end it up and close it out. Now, again, does that even mean that it's the end for the antagonists? Does that mean it's the end for the creatures that we've seen? Does that mean it's the end for any of this stuff? No, it just means it's the end of this battle.
Right.
Um, so there is a lot that is going to happen in issue 4,
Yeah. I
in
would think
terms of
so.
their interactions. Uh, but yeah, we're definitely going to close out. It's already written. We're going to close out this arc in issue 4 and basically move into the next arc. And issue 5 of Justice is a very special and very important issue to me in that I'm going to attempt to do something I've never seen in comics before. I'm
Okay.
going to attempt to do a double issue that ends on the same page. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I want to do between 15 to 20 pages of Justice. Let's say you're opening the book, right? You're reading
Yeah.
left to right like normal. I want 15 to 20 pages worth of Justice. Then I wanted you to be able to flip the book over and do 15 to 20 pages of Caliburn and
Mhm.
have them both end on that, 21st page
Oh.
in the center, and it's the same page. Because the book is going to feature both of them. It's going to be Justice and Caliburn wall to wall action.
Right.
And their first big, so even if you look at Nightfall, Justice and Caliburn are in there, but they don't really interact.
They don't.
Yeah, so issue 5 is going to be their first big interaction.
Okay.
And so again, I'm attempting to do something that I haven't seen done before that I think would be really cool. And I'm really like, I'm amped to do it because I already have the story, I already know the layout. And so, yeah, it just springboards a lot of other things.
So how much of Nightfall, four issues being completed, how much of that predetermines what we're going to see in the next volume of Justice and Caliburn?
A lot of it, honestly. In terms of, so Nightfall 5 is currently lettered. We are waiting on the colors to come back. So that'll be releasing really, really soon. We'll stay on track with the Kickstarter goals. I just wanted to say that, put that out there. So Justice he's got the most movable, quote unquote, timetable. So Justice number 1 through 5, and 1 through 6 is actually going to come before Nightfall. Then Nightfall happens, and then 7 through a million will be after Nightfall. Caliburn number 1, all of it, and what'll be Caliburn number 2 / Justice number 5 will also be before Nightfall, and then everything after that will be after. There's a nice send off in Nightfall. I don't want to spoil it. Not that it's like a huge thing, but there's a nice send off between Caliburn and Justice in Nightfall, and you see kind of how things develop there.
I do.
It's again, it's not a spoiler to say I said they're my Batman and my Superman, right? So like, I'm not killing them now, guys. You know what I mean? So anybody who's like, oh, they might die, dude, I'm not George R. Martin. They're not gonna die, right? Like they're gonna be here.
Nobody's safe in my books. It's not that type of story.
So Caliburn and Justice are going to make it out of Nightfall. How that changes them, we'll see, right? But again, you get to see their interaction, and again, how the world kind of molds around them.
Okay. Well, now that you've had the opportunity to expand, and you've inevitably had a plethora of your characters actually coexist within one book, now that they are all basically singular issues, Lux having it, Caliburn, Justice already pretty much going into his next arc, her, are they definitively within the same universe, or better yet, are they just pretty much all on adventures on their own?
So they are in the same universe. All of the Wingless Comics titles are in-universe titles. We don't have any that are not in the shared universe. Now they are still on their own adventures within that universe. But to take a page from Lonzo's book, Lonzo from Concrete Comics, we talking years and years ago, he used to say that like, if Acolyte destroys the moon, then Absolver has got to deal with the destroyed moon, right? Like he's got to deal with everything that happens.
Right.
And so I take that same kind of mentality in the universe creation and destruction and everything else we're doing. It's really the same thing. That's why you see her in Nightfall issue 3 on the Golden Gate Bridge, because she's based in San Francisco. Justice shows up because he knows what he's got to do. So does Caliburn. But the reality of it is that she's there because that's her place. Right. And so they all interact like that in terms of sharing the universe and sharing what goes on while doing their own thing. And if anybody thinks that we're not going to do another crossover with Wingless Comics characters in the near future, you guys don't know Wingless Comics characters. They're always
that was actually going to be my next question, because I was like, being how you've had you've had the opportunity to do a crossover event and succeeded in doing so. Like this was not a one-off thing that you essentially wanted to do and said, okay, I did it, now I'm done. You did 4 issues of it, completed the volume. So now, I mean, there's a good amount of collaborative companies that you're very close with and who you work very well with. And I feel like, as far as the community is concerned, I feel like, it's only essential that a lot of the companies that are out there, especially the Black indie comic book creators that are pretty much out there, if they have the opportunity to collaborate, do so.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Wingless Comics has a plan for our own intercompany crossovers. and intra-company crossovers. So again, it's important not to put the cart before the horse.
This is
So
true.
there is some more building that we're going to do with Wingless Comics, because I don't want it to just be a thing that's like a flash in the pan and blah blah blah. Like I want to build her, I want to build Lux, I want to build Immortalis, I want to build Saber, I want to build, you know, Scarlet Knight, who we just picked up. I want to build Avery the Astonishing, so that when we come together the next time, it again has even more gravity. But also I'm working on, I have a pitch out there for and with Unlikely Heroes Studios, who are really, really good to us, and they're really cool. Another indie company. And I'm currently writing a crossover that will feature characters from Fourth Wall Comics, from Hinte Entertainment, from Unlikely Heroes Studios, and a couple others. I forget, honestly, the two others. But it's slightly different than Nightfall in structure, but it's the same kind of thing. It'll probably be released all in one volume. It's going to be basically kind of 3 issues size, so maybe about 90 pages.
Okay.
And again, kind of just a melding. I like being able to tell stories that can be self-contained.
Yeah.
But then also have, they resonate with the characters if you take them out of that.
Right.
So again, Nightfall, you can actually look at Nightfall in a bubble, and Wingless can still do what it does outside of that, with ever having interacted with Nightfall. But you can also see, again, the ripples of what Nightfall is and was and what happened as the characters move forward. And so, I mean, I have no problem. I'm hoping, right? Not even say I have no problem. I'm hoping I become like, oh man, this is an indie crossover guy. If we want to do a crossover, come to Brian. You know what I mean? Like that would be a dream for me.
Well, I take it as you also being an avid reader of comics. You know, you tend to have a love for characters, even if they're not even your own. So, like, generally, I get the same excitement. You know, being how, of course, I done basically spent way too much bread on Kickstarter campaigns, but you know, I'm reading all these characters. I'm like, this character, like pieces here and there. This character's dope. This character's dope here. This character's dope over here. You know, but you're different than me. You get the opportunity to like have these brainstorming sessions in your head to be like, I wonder if I could take this person, combine them with mine, and pull some from here. And then maybe there's just like this big cataclysmic event that I could possibly make.
Yeah. So the fun part about that for me is the trust that people have had in me, right? So even with Nightfall, when I originally pitched Nightfall, I got a really great response. When I had to restructure and pitch it again, I got a really great response. So I was really, really happy. But those were also like my friends, you know what I mean? Like that was like my group. So how is Malachi gonna be like, nah, I don't want her in Nightfall? Like that, it's counterintuitive.
No, plus you would probably berate him and probably
exactly right, like
annoy him until he actually gave you the character.
Exactly. So when I pitched this new idea I have, it is a bunch of, there are people that obviously they're people that I know that I've edited for, we work together or whatever else, but the trust that they had with me using their characters. So I shot the text message, the group message, which I hate group messages, but I shot the group message to everybody. Hey, I'm hit everybody up just so it's easy. It's right here. I got an idea. I'd like to write your characters. What do you think? And before I could put what the synopsis was going to be, right? Like I just, hey, what do you, exactly. I had like 4 or 5. Yeah, do what you got to do. Yeah, I trust you. Yeah, I trust. I was like, I haven't even told you what it is yet, but okay. So that really made me feel great in terms of people trusting me with the characters.
Yeah, because you've actually had success in doing this.
Yeah.
So it's like, and the thing is, you didn't grow a big head and say, "Oh, my guy's going to shine throughout all this." You put Avery at the forefront.
Exactly, and so I think that was a bigger part of it. And Lawrence and I talked about that since the beginning. I feel like if you write a good character, or if you have a good character in general, it's going to shine no matter what. Like it's going to be a dope character. So you don't need to do extra to make it a dope character. What you want to do, in my opinion, is like bolster the others. I think of a movie called Dragon Tiger Gate. Again, Hong Kong cinema, right? It's got Donnie Yen in there, but he's not even the most important dude. He does end up being like dope, and he is important, blah, but it's Donnie Yen, bro. And he's not the most important hero in there. And I learned a lot from that, right? Like I learned a lot from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Chow Yun-fat's in there. He's not the most important dude. He's dope,
not.
but he's not the most important person.
The females are.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, to me, I think that's the strength of writing good characters, right? I don't have to worry about like, oh man, nobody, people aren't gonna like Justice. Okay, cool. If he's a dope character, you're gonna like him anyway, right? But then I need to make sure that people like her. I gotta make sure that people like Avery. I gotta make sure that people like Lux, right? And they don't have, take a back seat just because I'm writing it. Like the story is so much more important than the character.
Yeah.
With regard to that, like then my character with regard to that, whatever drives the story forward. And yeah, like you said, Avery literally is the driving force of Nightfall. You're from issue like 3 on, you're through her eyes.
Yeah.
It's issue 1 and 2 from her point of view. And then 3, 4, and 5, it's she's the driving force. She's the main factor of making things happen, which I feel like is important. To highlight other people's accomplishments, other people's characters, and why bring in, I hate when people do that. Why bring in another character just so they could be less than yours?
True.
Like, what's the point? You know? And I'm not going to get into one of these like, oh, well, is she stronger than Justice? I like what Stan Lee said. Like, who's the strongest character? Whoever's writing. Chooses. Exactly. Like, it's so none of that actually matters as long as you've got this great story going on. And if you can put your pride to the side, which sometimes is hard, don't get me wrong. I had somebody hit me up about some of the battle scenes and they were like, oh, Justice got punked. I was like, well, he's got to lose in order to win, man. Otherwise, if he's winning the entire time, there's no story.
And the thing is, some of those lesser battles where somebody that you would find unlikely to be like this invincible character, when they fall, you know, that more so gets talked about a lot more in connotation to the character. Like everybody has that definitive thing in their mind when Squirrel Girl beat Thanos.
Yeah.
And everybody still talks about that shit.
Yeah.
To this day.
Right.
Because somebody was like, so whoever wrote Squirrel Girl was like, I'm just gonna make Thanos the villain, and Squirrel Girl's gonna whoop his ass.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make him, he's gonna be formidable, but she's gonna beat him.
Yeah. And it made sense though, right? Like it was like, oh well, I remember reading it and being like, well, okay. It's like I may not have gone that way, but okay, yeah, it works.
It makes sense.
And so again, we get our pride sometimes in there, and we don't want our characters to lose because we're personifying that character. My character can't lose because it's the dopest. Your character should lose though. Like again, if your hero is winning all the time, then what's the point?
You're in the wrong business because nobody's hero has won every single battle.
Yeah. What's the danger there as well? Yeah. Like you just really oh, my hero's a badass, and then they did something else badass, and then they did something else. Okay, well then what's the tension there? What's the struggle? And so I think that's important. And again, I've talked about, when people write Superman like that, and they're like, oh, Superman's impossible to write. No, he's only impossible to write because they made him so powered up that we know he can't lose. Yeah. And then the moral dilemma isn't there because they're like, Superman's the greatest guy ever. Yeah. So all he does is run somewhere and punch something, and then it's a dub. He's going to lose a bunch of times, but then the only way he's going to win is doing the same thing he did the 7 other times he lost.
It's true.
And
I felt the same way when Marvel created Sentry, and then it took for a book like World War Hulk in order to like bring him down a notch.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had somebody that had the power of 1,000 suns, but yet somebody had pissed Hulk off so much.
Right.
It was like, fuck all these suns.
Right. I do not care. It's like,
You have the power of the entire universe. I'm gonna stomp this dude out.
Right, hands. But I feel the same way about Hulk himself sometimes. Because even in World War Hulk, okay, what's going on? And then Ghost Rider shows up, and then Ghost Rider gets this godly power level that he's never had before. And I was like, well, it does make sense.
It does make sense.
But you know what I mean?
I gotta do something.
Yeah. So it kind of even that out. It evened Hulk being damn near invincible. Like you stood up to Black Bolt, to Sentry, to everybody, and it evened some of these things out. And I think that makes, again, for more tension. You got to take L's, man. Like all your best heroes, all the best action movies, they take it. Look, I love Ripley in Aliens. She's taking L's the whole first 2/3 of the movie.
Oh, the first movie, the whole movie was an L. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
She had to just get out of there.
Right. That is seriously.
Just leave.
Yeah. So I feel like with the kind of Schwarzenegger syndrome, and it's not his fault because even he gets stabbed and stuff, you know, shot in the
Oh yeah,
leg or whatever.
he gets
Like,
stabbed and then look somebody dead in the face like he didn't get
yeah,
stabbed.
right. So we grew up on that 80s, 90s, like macho man. One of the things that I used to love, and I'm not so much of a Bruce Willis fan anymore, but Die Hard.
Oh
I
yeah, no
love Die
shoes,
Hard. Hmm?
no shoes.
Right?
Remember,
Even better than no
he had
shoes for me.
glass in his foot. You put
I
glass in my foot, I'm
It's a
done.
wrap. I'm not doing
Rest
this
of
no
the
more.
movie.
Yeah. I like when he gets shot in the shoulder and he screams like a teenage girl. He gets skinned by a bullet and it's, I was like, oh Jesus, like because he wasn't invincible at that point, right?
Right.
Like I remember Rambo, I think it's Rambo 3. This dude gets shot with like a spear or something and it's in his stomach. He pushes the spear out, puts gunpowder into the wound, burns the wound, and then he's cool. I was like, bro, that would hurt so much.
Yeah.
like
you would hear me throughout the entire jungle.
exactly. So I like having that. I get that everybody, you know, this is one of my critiques or criticisms about Wolverine. Wolverine is always like, I'm the best at what I do. It's just not real pretty. But he's really not. Like his kung fu skills suck. Like he just gets shot a lot and can take the damage. So then he stabs somebody. And I was like, that's not really fair. That's not really dope. And then his healing factor is so overpowered and on and on and on. They took him from being like a cool, dangerous kind of character to an unbeatable character with like a MacGuffin.
Right. He's pretty much like a sports team that has way too much offense but no defense.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, like it's I'm not a fan of that, and I feel like it makes for bad characters. Yeah, well, we know Wolverine can't lose, but Wolverine used to get beat up all the time. Sabretooth used to beat the brakes off of him, but that's what made him dope. Because he would still continue to try to fight him. The next time it came up, he'd know he just got beat down, right? And then he's like, I'm not gonna let you touch these people. And he gets beat up again. He's like, damn. But at least he kept trying, right? At least he kept going at it. At least there was a skill level there. And that's heroic. If you can't lose a fight and you fight everybody, that's not heroic. You can't lose. There's no danger there. There's nothing.
I've seen a lot of kids like just get into fights the entire time and they lose the entire time, but they continue to fight. Now that person has a lot of heart. Doesn't mean that they're the best at what they do.
No, exactly. Like, yeah. So yeah, I'm much more of a fan of a person who's actually laying things off. I love Gladiator. You know what I mean? Like Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Oh, yeah.
Bam is stabbed in the back. His lung is punctured. And he's still out there like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to die. But like, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that come off as heroic.
Right.
That you actually are in peril and you might die.
Yeah.
But you're going to fight for what's right. As opposed to, again, like a Superman who's like, oh, I'm going to fight for stuff. Well, yeah, you're invincible. I fight everything too. It's not... who Darkseid can hurt you. So one person, like that's like me being right now, like I could beat up everybody else, but like if Mike Tyson shows up, Mike Tyson's gonna fold me. Okay, I'm still probably gonna try to fight him because I could beat everybody else.
Right.
You know, like
your confidence is like on 20.
That's what I'm saying, right? So it doesn't. It's not for good. It's not good storytelling, in my opinion.
That's true.
When we're all about that, like it just doesn't make sense to me.
That's true. Well, bro, I appreciate you doing this with me, man. So how much longer we got for issue 3?
We got 8 more days on Kickstarter. We are live right now. We are over 5K.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, sir. We funded. This is something that I'm unveiling here or talking about here for the first time. Everybody knows that Wingless Comics always puts whatever profit we get back into the next comic book so we can get the next comic book done when the next cycle comes around. Because we're releasing 7 titles, I get a little bit of breathing room, which thank you, Jesus, I need it. But what Wingless Comics and what I am going to do with this campaign is move Wingless Comics and Wingless Entertainment a little bit forward. The profit from this campaign is going to be put towards our animated series that fans may or may not have seen images of, called Magnificent. It is a spy funk Western. And so I'm really looking forward to that. Again, I'm really looking forward to building the platform that a lot of us always talk about in terms of moving Black excellence and Black comics and Black entertainment forward. I want to be even the smallest piece of that to show us different images. How many Black Westerns have you seen? Like Posse, Bass Reeves. Like I can name them
That's
because
it.
there's only what's it
Oh,
called?
the one that just came out, The
Yeah,
Harder They
let's see, The
Fall.
Harder They Fall, right? And then the YouTube that they did before that, the short.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's a handful, and I definitely want to be part of that to show that we have more to give. I also like steampunk. Steampunk is great. I feel like it's an area that's been untapped again by Black artists and Black people, and so I'm very excited for that. You guys obviously stay tuned. That should be hitting by the end of the year here because animation takes a little bit of time. But we always, and I always say we because Wingless Comics is a group of people. But I personally am always thankful for everything that people like yourself do, Facts, and people who support the campaign and again move this entertainment forward. You know what I mean,
Hmm.
and give us the opportunity to entertain and to tell stories and to get our characters out there. So thank you, everyone. Again, 8 days live on Kickstarter now, over 5K. We want to continue to grow. We historically have a good last week. So I'm hoping that that continues and we jump up a little bit more. I thank everyone for everything they're already doing. And like I always say, and I actually legitimately mean it, you will not be, if you're a comic book fan, you're not going to be disappointed by anything Wingless puts out. Like there's, again, you may not like, it might not be your genre, it might not be your story, but you will never, ever be disappointed by what we put out. We're going to only put out top tier art, top tier stories, and things that kind of resonate with our audience. So thank you all again.
Word up. And that's an undeniable fact. So from Brian Lambert, Wingless Comics, this is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and we are out.